Viewers, we have been seeing these anti-CAA demonstrations all throughout the country. Some state governments have handled it well, others not so much. There were some who thought this was a great agitation and they were indirectly encouraging them also. So to create all these things requires a fair amount of planning and execution. And we have a very keen watcher who has been observing all this stuff, and he has some very keen insights on what could have happened that led up to all these spontaneous but similar agitations throughout the country. Rajeev Srinivasan, welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you, Sri. Good to be here. Although, if I might digress for a minute, the San Francisco 49ers lost the Super Bowl today, which is greatly disturbing for me as a long-term fan. But be that as it may, let's move back to the topic on hand. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, there has been a series of protests, I guess, for about a month and a half or so. They've been going on all over the country. And the interesting thing is that if you look at them carefully and dispassionately, it's pretty evident that these are not spontaneous. As you said, these are planned. And there is a great deal of planning that's required and a significant amount of money. And there were some reports that said certain shadowy groups had invested 120 crores in these agitations. And also the entire locus, if you will, of the agitations have changed. To begin with, it was supposed to be against CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. But over time, it's become very clearly an attempt to push the Modi government down. You know, it's sort of like, we're going to force you to withdraw this bill, or this act, and we're going to humiliate you so much. Hopefully, you will then resign because you're so ashamed, or something along those lines. And if that's not possible, we're going to make life so miserable for you with continuous low-level insurgency that it's going to be impossible for you to continue to govern. That's sort of the I guess what's behind the scenes and reading between the lines. Like every day in Trivandrum, there's an agitation, literally every day. And the government here, of course, being a communist government, is supporting these agitations. And the funny thing, of course, if you look back at CAA, many people have commented on how that is almost identical to the Lautenberg Act in the US, which is giving succor to some highly disadvantaged and oppressed people, basically Christian and Jewish people. And this act, the CAA in India, is doing exactly the same. It's trying to support certain highly disadvantaged people in several countries on the periphery of India. And the facts are that people of non-Muslim origin in those countries are severely oppressed on the basis of religion. Almost every day you hear a new report about some young woman, even a young girl of 13 or 14, being abducted, forcibly converted, and married off to her abductor. This is at such a massive level that it's like 3 girls a day on average, 1,000 girls a year. And this is sort of like an industry. It's happening at such a massive level that it's very hard to believe that it's not orchestrated by some malign forces. The intent, I believe, is to exterminate the Hindus there. And it's progressed rather well. So if you have essentially genocide going on in a country, it's absolutely reasonable for anybody who has any level of humanity to be willing to support them. And I saw this heartbreaking video the other day of this young girl. She must have been somewhere around 14 or 15, and she had been gang raped, and she is out there on the ground, you know, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and she's trying to get up. I mean, she cannot get up because her body has been so damaged by this gang rape. She's simply unable to stand up. And then she's in hospital. And this is the kind of thing that's going on that the CAA is at least trying to say can be ameliorated to a little bit to a little extent by saying those of you who have come here due to religious oppression before 2015 will be given a fast track to citizenship. And that's it. And it's no big deal. This is metamorphosed, as you know, into something that's basically a low-level insurgency, and there have been all kinds of slogans, blood-curdling slogans. So that's, as we all know, the background. What I was interested in looking at was, and this is the article that you kindly published for me, was what is it that can be done using technology to kind of control this sort of unruly behavior. And the first thing, and so far perhaps the most effective thing, has been the use of video. So closed circuit cameras, CCTV cameras, have been placed in a number of places. And unfortunately, quite a few of them are not working. I've noticed this is true of traffic CCTV cameras, but at least the ones that individuals have placed and business establishments have placed in their vicinity, those seem to be working. And one thing that can be done, and is being done, is to use them to identify the people who are out there rioting and destroying public property. And what happened in Uttar Pradesh is instructive. What the government did there is they identified people from video and then showed up in their houses with a bill saying that you damaged, 10 lakhs worth of public property and kindly pay up or you're going to go to jail. And guess what? People paid up. So that is a deterrent, because if it's going to come back to you, if your mischief is going to be tracked back to you, then you're going to be a little bit more careful. Usually what happens, given the state of the judiciary in India, as we've all seen with the circus over the killing of the execution of the killers of Jyoti Singh Pandey, otherwise known as Nirbhaya, there are all kinds of loopholes, and our judicial system is so messed up, and I won't use stronger words, that you may get away with all kinds of things, including murder. But for the first time, rioters have been presented with bills and they've been identified, and the result has been that they've become very careful. So they put on masks, and they've been observed going around turning these CCTV cameras away, so they point into walls so that they're not able to look at the scene. However, there are other things that can be done. Something that I didn't think of when I was writing this article was what's being done in China. I've been seeing some videos that are quite interesting. They're sending out drones in the context of the coronavirus, and from the drones they're exhorting people, why are you outside? Why aren't you at home? Go home, old lady. Go wear a mask, things like that. So we can use drone technology also to kind of be in the air and identify people on the ground using facial recognition. So that's the first thing. Now, I should say, I should make a disclaimer that facial recognition makes me feel nervous, because any kind of continuous surveillance can be used against you, because governments can have malign objectives. Now, for example, if you remember, the UPA government had this objective of declaring all Hindus to be criminals, and they brought this thing called Communal Violence Bill, which, if you recall, basically said that any Hindu is determined to be guilty until proven innocent, just on the basis of a say-so by some non-Hindu who claimed that the Hindu had committed violence on them. So you have governments like that that can be massively negative if they have surveillance data and databases about you. So there is that concern. And of course, you've seen what the Chinese have done in Xinjiang and with their social credit and so forth. So let me be very clear that it makes me nervous to believe that there is a great deal of information, private information about individuals in the hands of government. Having said that, though, there is this issue of security for normal citizens. You want to be in a situation where the government has enough power that it keeps troublemakers and rioters and terrorists in check. And to that extent, whatever technology is used by the government to control these unruly elements is, in my opinion, acceptable. Do you agree? What do you think?
Yes. So I was just thinking about what you had mentioned about what's happening in Sindh and in interior Punjab. See, what the Indian government does is it calls the Pakistani ambassador to express protest, and they make some noises, and then there'll be a couple of FIRs filed, and then what? Nothing. So I think India needs to take it to a next level. India needs to arm these people some way so that there is something like the Mukti Bahini, which was able to stand up to whatever was happening, the atrocities that were happening in the erstwhile East Pakistan that went on to become Bangladesh. And they need to try and make sure that whoever is left there can fend for themselves. This is just ethnic genocide. And these people have the gall to come and make noise in US. I mean, I saw a protest, anti-CAA protest. I can tell you there were 40 people for the CAA and there were 250 people against it. And I can look at that swath of 250. Every one of them looks to be from Pakistan. What the heck do they have to do with an internal matter of India? And why do they have to take that? So somebody was busing them in, somebody was having food for them. And this is just a ludicrous thing. And to make things worse, an Indian American origin congresswoman is trying to move some resolutions in the Congress as if they don't have anything better to do, censoring India on CAA and on 370. Shame on you, Pramila Jayapal. You don't deserve to be a congresswoman. In fact, I hope that you become a one-term congresswoman and a lesson for what a congresswoman should not be. And there is also this other creative character called Ro Khanna, who also is equally bad. And I hope these people learn their lessons and never ever get re-elected again. But I'm ranting here because I just see that they have come to, they got elected on the shoulders of Indian Americans, and then now they turn their backs on them. And in fact, they are actively siding with the opposite side. So you have all these hypocrites, and I can't. You know, if they don't even want to see what is going on in Pakistan, and they want to just concentrate on, you know, pouring vitriol on India, come on now. You are supposed to have been born there. I know I'm hectoring them and I'm lecturing them, but I am so disappointed with this lot. And there are a new crop of Indian American congressmen and women who are contesting in 2020. I hope all of them win and they have a better mindset in terms of what is right and what is wrong. And hopefully that there will be a voice of Sanatana Dharma in the Congress. Today, there are people of Indian origin, but I don't think the voice of Dharma is being heard there. So why that is important is a lot of things start from US, and US starts directing all these things. And if the compass is off here, it reverberates all over the world. I'm sorry, you're trying to come in.
No, I agree with you. You know, it's very distressing. And in my opinion, there is a lot of money floating around. You know, there's ISI money. I'm sure there is other money. And I also noticed, for example, that Bernie Sanders, who is now a leading candidate for the Democratic nomination for president, has a Pakistani origin campaign manager, right? And earlier, if you remember, Hillary Clinton had a Pakistani origin, you know, I mean, conscience keeper named Huma Abedin, right?
Yes, yes.
So somehow these Pakistanis have infiltrated into government, and a lot more of them, if I remember correctly, are now running for elected office, not only Pakistanis, but also other Muslim Americans, such as, you know, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar.
I can tell you, both of those are going to lose. I'm sorry, continue, please continue. They're both going to lose.
What I'm saying is the interesting contrast between them and the people of Hindu origin. You know, Ro Khanna is of Hindu origin. Pramila Jayapal, although I believe she's become converted to some virulent form of Christianity, she is of Hindu origin. Those people who go there, they end up being extremely anti-Hindu and anti-India, whereas every single Muslim who becomes part of the establishment there is very, very strongly supportive of Islamic sentiments wherever they are in the world. So it's an interesting contrast. What is it that's driving these former Hindus or people of Hindu origin or Indian origin to be so anti-Indian? I don't know the answer. It may be leftism. And in fact, to just bring that back to the situation in India, there are so many Hindus who are so incredibly anti-Hindu in the CAA agitation here. In fact, this is very broad. I was on the IIT Madras alumni list, and there was a Hindu named communist who was basically saying, this Ayodhya verdict, and I'm going to use some technical terms that he used, French, I guess. He said, I don't give a dash, 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 dash about an old temple. And I don't care if you care about it because I don't care. So my question is, why? What is driving these people of Hindu origin to become so excessively and sort of knee-jerk anti-Hindu? And I think in India, at least, it's got to do with the education system. And that brings us back to another really important point, because there is massive propaganda that's being fed to these school children and college students in terms of the so-called secular agenda and the secular textbooks. And that's, in a way, a significant failure on the part of the Modi administration to make a dent in the kinds of nonsense that people are being taught. Because, in effect, they're taught that there was no civilization in India before the Mughals came here, and the Mughals brought us everything that's civilized, and why are Hindus and Indians so ungrateful to them for that? This kind of unbelievable propaganda is influencing these people, and that's sort of what the Romila Thapars and Irfan Habibs and so forth, the Delhi school of pseudo history have written, and that's what the textbooks in the CBSE stream or ICSE stream or even the state streams are all teaching these young children. There's nothing whatsoever in these textbooks about the regional, the valor of the regional people. Like, for example, in Kerala, we don't study about how Tipu Sultan was basically defeated by Travancore, and how Travancore defeated the Dutch in 1741 in a remarkable engagement in Kolachal, and the Dutch left and never came back again. We don't learn about the Chola Empire. We don't learn about the Vijayanagar Empire. In fact, in history in India, it starts with the arrival of the Mughals. So there is this massive brainwashing that has gone on, and then this whole religion of secularism that's been, sort of shoved down everybody's throats. This has turned a lot of Hindus into anti-Hindus and communists and so forth, and so that's very, very deplorable. But let me just get back to what I was saying about the technology aspect. So, of course, you have the CCTV, but I was reading a very interesting article about how the Pentagon is now looking at identifying people through measuring their heartbeats. So even if you wear your mask at a distance of 200 meters, because your heartbeat print is as unique as your fingerprint and or your thumbprint, and therefore people can be identified at a distance. The technology is not quite there, but this is another thing I think will be widely available. So rioters, need to be very, very aware that their whereabouts are going to be figured out. And secondly, of course, their cell phones are going to betray them, because cell phones know exactly where they've been and they know what they've done. And that information is available not only on the phone itself, but it's also being held on servers like Google Maps servers and so forth. So very, very easily, governments can identify your movements. So that's something that I think the Indian government needs to do. And in addition to the people movements, now there is this new thing called FASTag, which is it's the radio frequency identifier that you put on your vehicle to go through toll booths. And I'm thinking this is great news, because now if you have some particular vehicle that you have identified as something that you need to surveillance or to do surveillance on, its movements can be tracked by just putting those sensors on convenient lampposts, right? So there is more and more technology out there that's going to be able to identify your movements. And even more interestingly, there was this long article in the New York Times about something called Clearview. Now, this is an application that can scrape your picture out of your social media feed or whatever photos you put up there. And instead of other mechanisms for collecting a database of people, this can essentially use social media to collect a database of people who are doing unhappy things like calling for violence or whatever. So surveillance as a tool of governments and of anti-terrorism and anti-rioting departments is going to get more and more powerful. I think we have to do those things, because what this whole movement has metamorphosed into is something where people are standing up. There's a fellow named Sharjeel Imam, and he basically said we need to cut off the northeast of India by occupying the chicken's neck, and then basically turn that into greater Bangladesh. This has been a dream that Jinnah had also, that that entire northeast area should be part of East Pakistan. So people are saying these things that are absolutely seditious. This is treason, you know, and what's happening in this Shaheen Bagh as well. A great deal of what's going on there is treasonous, and the government has not, come down like a ton of bricks on them. But I think they should, and individuals need to be identified. Those people who are causing trouble and they're inciting people and who are mouthing anti-national and treasonous slogans, and those, and importantly, that goes back to what you were saying in your book about black money and white. Where is the money coming for this? The money trail. And these days, with PAN and Aadhaar linking and financial data being a lot more transparent, and the coming insertion of blockchain into financial data, we should be able to collect a great deal more data about what's going on. And by the way, I saw this interesting chart that says fintech has taken off to a significant extent in India. I was shocked actually to see an EY document that said, Ernst & Young, that said that China is absorbing fintech at a phenomenal level. 87% of the people are absorbing it. And what stunned me was that they said that in India also 87% of the people are adopting fintech, whereas the number for America is something like 24%. And I can see that on the ground. I can now go to my local vegetable vendor and I can buy my vegetables by using Beam, and other people use Paytm. Now, the interesting thing is that this data is then collectible and identifiable as stuff that you're doing. And incidentally, if you've got plenty of big data about transactions, financial transactions, you can draw correlations between those bits of data and the kinds of mischief that you might be able to do. So what I'm trying to say is that, there are ways, rioters, be careful, beware. Big Brother is turning around and watching you.
I think they would need to use all these tools, because from what I heard at my book release at Kochi, the ex-DGP of Police of Kerala, Dr. T.P. Senkumar,
yeah.
He said that with the money that they got, this counterfeit money, Muslims have brought up just about every riverfront property that was available for sale in Kerala. They've also brought up along the national highway all the property that is deemed to be valuable, and you're going to have a lot of pain trying to figure out who got it, how did they get it, how did somebody of very limited means suddenly start driving around in SUVs, and so on and so forth. But there is a way to do it, and I think the government will have to use all the technology that it can muster at its disposal and do it. People are not realizing that even though this is a book of fiction, it's based on facts. I have given a whole slew of references at the end of my book to point people to look at some of the events that happened. I'm just basically stringing together a story that is essentially touching on facts again and again and again and again. So anyway, I just hope that this opens people's eyes to what is happening in India and why. I think it also explains some of the reasons why the economy is struggling so much, because there is so much black money that you can't really measure the velocity properly, and therefore whatever you do, it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on the overall economy. And plus, we have more microeconomists than macroeconomists in India, and the two are confused. So you are like three blind men searching for a dark cat in a room that is without light, and the cat has just left the building. So that sort of a situation here. So anyway. This technology needs to be used in India. With 1.3 billion people, you can't just assume that people are going to follow laws. That train has left the station a long time ago. Now the laws have to be enforced. Thank you very much, Rajeev.
Thank you. Thank you, Sri. Nice chatting with you.
Nice talking.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.